For men who used to be creepy towards women and have since stopped, what was it that made you realize you were creepy that prompted you to change? When I broke up with my first serious girlfriend, I was totally heartbroken. I called her all the time, cried on the phone. I even threatened to kill myself and told her so. This went on for some time. Eventually I threatened again to kill myself and went to bed drunk. I woke up to a voicemail from her crying her eyes out begging me not to do it. I was so ashamed about my behavior. I realized in that message what I had become. It was absolutely her right, as it was mine, to end a relationship at any time for any reason, without being hounded and traumatized by the ex. I was evil and toxic. I apologized and promised never to do it again. After that I left her alone. I was still heartbroken, but I found comfort in my friends, and in activities and hobbies instead. I had several failed relationships after her, but I never again treated a woman this way. This was over 15 years ago and now I am married. I have been tempted many times to contact her and apologize some more for my behavior, but the truth is, she is better off without me in her life. I hope she is well. A lot of people replied to this and I tried to answer every single comment, but there was just too many. I never expected this to blow up like it did. Every single message I received was honest and lovely. I appreciate them all. To love, and to happiness forever. My friend broke up with her first boyfriend because he cheated on her and he started sending her pictures of him cutting himself. She eventually came to realize that she couldn't stop him and told him to seek help, then blocked him. I really hate it when people try and guilt-trip people into liking them again, it just hurts both people. Are you Buster Bluth? In middle school, I was a mid-puberty, horniness-stricken, little perv. I didn't do a good job of concealing it either. I would always get really close to my one friend because I liked her at the time, and looking back it was so wrong to do. It took me looking at what they were thinking and how my behavior affected them to really stop being creepy. Hindsight helps a lot as well. I remember the hugs that lingered a little too long, the hands that went a little too low, the "where's my hugs," lack of personal space, etc. that I got from boys in middle school. I'm honestly glad to hear reflection happens on y'all's side. Growing self-awareness that I wasn't the center of the goddamn universe. Went through a chasing potential girlfriends too hard phase in my earlier adult years, including mistaking simple offers of friendship and work colleague status for actual interest. It wasn't stalking level and it never reached the point of discipline or even commenting, but it was probably to the point of being a little unprofessional and uncomfortable for the girl involved. That was decades ago and I'm now with a company that doesn't tolerate that sort of thing. I went on a date with a guy who had stalked a coworker and been fired for it. He mentioned that he had been fired from a job and I asked what happened. He explained that he had used his security clearance as part of the IT department to find this woman's phone number and proceeded to text her explaining who he was and how he got her number. I told him it was kinda creepy, and that he should have expressed his interest to her rather than sneaking around to find her number. After the date he ghosted me, then texted me months later saying he was desperate for a cuddle buddy. Yeah, no thanks. Talking to women, becoming friends with women, changing my circle of friends, growing up, learning empathy, and the final nail in the coffin was sobriety. When I was in my late teens and early 20s I was constantly chasing girls, as the expression goes. Nobody ever seemed to take offense to it, that kind of behavior seemed expected. Plus, I always seemed to be able to find someone who was interested in hooking up. Then I got married, so obviously I stopped. I found myself single again 10 years later and quickly reverted to my old ways. It wasn't long before I realized that things that I could get away with at 21 no longer worked at 32. In fact, based on the reactions of a couple of women, I realized I was being creepy. Of course the women I was perusing were also older too. I realized I had to take a more mature approach. Things went much better after that, but I still cringe to think of some of my early attempts to get back in the game. Hearing women complain and thinking, oh shit, I've done that, seriously has helped me improve a lot of things. My best friend was actually the creepy guy. We were both freshmen in college and virgins, and I was an attractive woman who spoke to him. It took me leaving a party because he wouldn't stop putting his hands on my shoulders and a guy friend of mine walking up to him a few days later, not at my bidding, he just decided to do it on my own, and telling him, "You make Mina Owl really uncomfortable, stay away for her." He apologized to me and gave me space, but we were still in the same social circles, so we saw each other around and gradually became really good friends. He has apologized for making me uncomfortable multiple times, and once over a year after that party, he turned to me and just said, "I'm so sorry for that night. I'm a woman but I have a story about being creepy towards men." In college, me and my long-term boyfriend had just broken up because he wanted to date my friend instead. This left me desperate to date or sleep with new people so I would feel desirable again. My good friend Paul was in college as well and had a cute roommate who was not into me. I asked for his number and Paul straight up told me no because his roomie wasn't into me. Well, I went through Paul's phone for the guy's number anyway. It only took me a couple days to realize how genuinely creepy and desperate I was being, and every time I look back at this I cringe. They aren't laughing because I'm funny, they're laughing because they're scared. Edit. Thanks for the votes and awards everyone. I was sure that this would get me nothing but criticism for being a creeper in my youth. I realized that I wasn't a knight in shining armor, and they weren't princesses to be adored and saved. Rather than trying to ingratiate myself with them, I stopped giving a fuck and just started casual conversations. If they gave curt responses and standoffish body language, I politely exited the conversation and moved on. By caring less, I succeeded more. I'm a lady 26F who has been creeped upon, and one of my old bosses 70M would grope and kiss me during meetings and in front of other people and employees. He didn't stop until a CEO friend of his got me too Ed and their company went under. I guess he finally realized that could happen to him too. Even now he'll say things that are on the fence of inappropriate and complain about how people can't take a joke anymore. Face with rolling eyes. Maturity finally caught up with me. I had one particularly bad experience with a girl who I think was genuinely interested in me at one point, but I was super awkward and didn't have a clue how to act right, so I never really made a move beyond sad attempts at flirting, and so I think she eventually just thought I was a weirdo who wouldn't leave her alone. Then one day we were both in a big group of people just talking, and a mutual friend completely out of the blue suggested that A should ask me out, and what followed was possibly the single most uncomfortable moment of my entire life to date. A pretty much turned white and she was asterisk out of there, asterisk. I'm sure she believed that I had put our mutual friend up to it. I had not. If anything, I was just as horrified. That single event shattered my self-confidence so completely that I spent the next year and a half actively avoiding any kind of conversation or interaction with girls, because I had concluded that I must be a creep and therefore the right thing to do was to protect girls from my creepiness by isolating myself. Eventually I kind of figured myself out, and by my early 20s I was still awkward as hell, but I managed to have a couple of relationships and plenty of platonic female friendships. Oh man. Thank you for realizing the difference. It is really hard to suppress the nervous "how can I get out of this situation safely" giggles. Saw this answer some time ago. It was this dude that tried to confess to the girl he liked by going to her apartment and make her dinner with candles, flowers and all that shit, but then the girl came home and the first thing she said was, "Are you going to kill me?" But I don't understand, how did he get in? Did he steal her key? Did he break in? Did he have the key to begin with? Did he ask her roommate for help? Because all of those are creepy, just varying levels of creepiness. I used to have this older man always flirt and be unprofessional towards me at work when I first started. I was around 24 years old. After I had enough of his weird comments and flirting, I told him that he has a daughter the same age as me, which was true because he'd talk about his family at times, and that how would he like it if some older man was talking to his daughter like that and making sexual comments to her. He became less weird and flirtatious and more regular, holding normal conversations. He moved shifts so I don't even see him anymore. I had a man at work who was beyond inappropriate, always, all the time, and the daughter comment was what finally did it for him too. We were sitting in a room, I was quietly working on computer, paperwork stuff with a headphone in, and from the silence behind me he asks, "Do you like getting your hair pulled when you get fucked?" I spun around in my chair and said, "Can you even imagine someone talking to your daughter like that? Like holy shit." I've seen a lot of variations of this, followed by, "He should see women as people without having to view the situation in the context of someone he loves." Which is absolutely true, of course, but I think it misses the point. Some people just don't make that leap until you demonstrate it for them. Kudos to you for getting through to him. Kudos to him for taking the specific example you gave him. I don't want someone to be a creep to my daughter, and being able to generalize it, I shouldn't be a creep. Ideally that wouldn't have been needed, but obviously it was, and this time it did the trick. I'm guilty of this, though naively and innocently so. This sounds weird to me now, but I actually grew up in a household that valued back, neck, and shoulder rubs. I did this for a long, long time to people I was friends with, men and women. In my head, it was just a way of saying I cared. In retrospect, it undoubtedly gave of a super creepy vibe. I stopped once I saw it in context of someone else doing it to a woman, and her facial reaction to it. Then it just clicked. Wow, that's inappropriate.